All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this month Limitless Live, where we dive into the power of parenting. And today I have such an important topic, reward and punishment that works for kids. I want to welcome you to this episode, and I am your host, Olga Binyaminov, educator, a mom of three, and a founder of Exceed Learning Center. Today, I have a conversation with someone who knows a little bit more, and it's about what every parent needs to know and needs to hear: rewards and punishment that works for kids. Joining me today, my dear friend and guest, Sofiya. She's an expert for many years and experiences working with children and families. And together, we're going to explore how to shape behavior in a way that builds trust, builds emotional intelligence, and also builds intrinsic motivation, not just the quick compliance. We're going to explore how to shape behavior effectively while building trust, building emotional intelligence, and actually a long-term motivation. Sophia, I want to start with reality that many parents face. But first, welcome. Thank you so much for finding the time to be with us today.
First of all, I want to say thank you and good morning for thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. I've seen your videos before, amazing. And I'm very happy to be on it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
So,
sorry. Go
the
ahead.
go-to strategies that most parents have is yelling, timeout, taking away toys, which we know often doesn't work, right? Many parents just rely on timeouts. They take away things because they want instant results, right? But we only see very little long-term change. So the behavior doesn't really change long term, and everyone ends up being so frustrated. So, why do traditional punishments fail?
Okay, so traditional punishments usually fail because the child, right, has a breakdown, correct? And the parents don't know how to handle it. So they use the typical way of reacting, yelling, which is very easy and often it happens constantly, screaming, punishing them by putting them in the corner without explanation, having them do something where they don't want to do it. But if you, as a parent, actually sit down with the child and explain what is wrong and why it's wrong to do it, then that is where a child can learn from it versus using, the traditional punishment. The child can also become emotionally unstable or socially unstable from having someone scream at them all the time. It's very important to talk to a child so he can understand or she can understand what's going on versus just being punished for no reason.
Yeah, and that is so, so true because what really happens in the molecular level, our brain science actually backs all of this up. When a child feels shamed or threatened, which is what they feel when a parent is yelling or threatening to take a toy, their brain switches into defense mode. So at that point, when the brain switches to fight, flight, or freeze, learning stops. So we want to engage their thinking brain, not actually triggering their survival brain. And neuroscience, being a brain coach, this is one of the most important things I teach. Children feel threatened or shamed, and they shift to that defense mechanism, shut down learning. So if we can't engage the thinking brain, then the survival brain is in action, which brings us to this bigger question. What is the difference between discipline and punishment? It's a swap word that many people use interchangeably, but it actually has a huge impact.
Okay. I think you heard of Pavlov's law. Ivan
Mhm.
Pavlov, he had a way to discipline the dogs, correct? It was a conditioning theory. He would have a dog that had no condition or stimuli at the beginning. And then this dog would have some kind of food, right? Without any bell. Then he would just progress the whole conditioning theory by giving the dog food with the bell sound. As soon as the dog heard the bell, he knew for sure that he's getting the food. So he would start salivating. And over time, of course, Pablo would do the same thing. And at the end, he deconditioned the dog from getting used to getting food. So what did he do? He didn't give any more food to the dog when he rang the bell. Now, in the case of kids, you want to make sure you condition them, not like what Pablo did, of course, but I'm saying like giving children a rewards chart, doing something that helps them stay focused and learn to be more behavioral active in a positive way versus negative. A kid does not, understand the difference between positive and negative unless you actually sit down and explain it. If a child starts jumping around in the classroom, you can't expect them to change his behavior. So what you do is usually have him sit down next to you, bring a little chart with you, and say, if you behave today, you get to color this chart. And every time he does a good thing or behaves well, he just keeps coloring it. So when he doesn't behave, he loses his chance of getting a reward or coloring in his reward chart. Did I miss a question?
No, this is a beautiful strategy of how to deal with, with discipline as opposed to punishment. This morning I went live and I explained the difference between discipline and punishment because discipline is really about teaching. And what you're doing with this example that you just gave, you're teaching that conditioning on rewarding, which works very well with younger kids, as opposed to punishing, which seeks control. When you're trying to get control over the child, that's what creates that power struggle between them, right? I think discipline just helps children learn the values, learn the skills, learn empathy. But with punishment, what we do is we basically just suppress their behavior.
That's correct.
They don't know why. They're just being shut down without the explanation. So I truly love this example, and I think that's an amazing strategy. At Exceed Learning Center, we always aim to correct over criticize because discipline builds character. And when you punish, you actually just build resentment. So I love that example, Sofiya. Thank you so much. Now, tying it into my next question, talking about rewards, why why would we use rewards and when are they helpful as opposed to backfire at us? You know how kids just used to the reward so they won't do it because there is no reward. So when would it backfire, if at all?
I'll give you an example. I have a student who is used to getting rewards from his parents all the time. So when he would come to my sessions, he would expect something for doing an activity. So I would tell him, listen, this is not how it works. I'm sorry, but we're going to sit down. We're going to do X, Y, and Z before we get a reward. And I had a system set in place from the beginning of the year when I work with students, of course. So I would tell them, if you want a reward, you have to first go through this chart. There's 10 checks that they have to put. And it really helps versus them getting candies all the time, which is so unhealthy. They're used to getting, candies from parents, from whoever. Um, in my way, I mean, the way I do it, I like to first give them work, which I don't call work. I say, let's do some fun activity. And then after that, we start doing the actual activity, which is, let's say, ABC writing. And they're like, oh, this is boring. I don't like it. So I come up with music where it's more interesting and they get so into it. They're like, oh, this is so much fun, Miss Sofiya. I love it. And then after that, they get to choose also activities that they want to do. Let's say they want to play with the putty. I love to show and tell, by the way. So this is a putty that I have, and they look for different things inside of it. And they use either their fingers or hands. I'm more into sensory-based activities as well, besides behavioral. But that's for another topic. Um, yeah, and then towards the end, what I do is, oh, let me go back to the question. What I do is have them become more disciplined instead of giving them a lot of rewards. So when you give a child consistently a lot of rewards, they get so used to it that they expect it already. And they're like, oh, so what? I already got it. What's the difference between you giving me a toy today or tomorrow? So for me, it's more like setting the behavior in place versus giving what they want.
That's amazing. I love this. And it reminds me of my brain coach, Jim Quick, if you guys are familiar with him. He says, don't reward the outcome, reward the process, which is exactly what you're doing with that example. When you praise the effort, when you bring curiosity, when you help them solve problems, not just the result itself, that builds lifelong learning. And that's incredible. Can you give us an example of natural consequences? And for those of you that I think I missed that, I didn't introduce you well enough to say that what you do is an OT, so you deal with children all the time, and therefore this reward system is so important in what you do. So I want you to please give us an example of natural consequence and how they work better than forced punishments.
Hmm. I have a few examples. I'll start with the easy one. Let's say the child loves to work with putty or likes to jump around on a ball. Well, not on a ball. The what's it called? Oh my gosh. They go on swings and stuff, let's say. And if they're really not behaving, right? So the natural consequence I usually do is not let them do that activity that same day. And I don't believe in like forced punishment, as you mentioned. It's more like naturally telling them, okay, today you didn't behave. And I don't think you can do this activity because you were supposed to finish this activity at first, like let's say writing, and you were focused on something else. You were just deciding to make sounds or jumping during the activity instead of following directions. So I sit down and usually talk about it versus punishing them. When you actually sit and talk with them, they understand better. Of course, if they're 5 years old, you have to keep on repeating. Repetition is very important to help them understand natural consequences. If you don't listen, you get a timer next time in the next session, and they hate the timer because then they have to actually compete against the timer to finish the activity. And it makes them so nervous and sometimes gain anxiety, which I don't want them to have anxiety. Of course, I like to do the opposite. Um, so over time, of course, they become more better with the timer. And this is my natural consequence. I shouldn't say it, but it is. I'm not for yelling. Of course, that's not professional, or God forbid, like getting physical with the child or like putting them in the corner. It's not going to work. It's very important to actually sit and talk with the child. If they don't follow through, then you tell them what's next as a consequence.
This is amazing. I actually, again, this morning, I explained the difference between natural consequence and logical consequence. So, natural consequence is something like you tell your child, wear a coat, and your child doesn't listen to you. So, what's going to happen? Yes, for us as parents, it hurts so much to let our child walk outside when it's cold. But the natural consequence is they're going to walk out and feel cold, right? A logical consequence is when they do something irrational, like spilling the juice or breaking a toy, and logical consequence, you broke a toy, you're not getting a replacement. It's something you did out of anger. It's not because of whatever that is. So it's so important. And I see that you have this timer that you're showing. I'm sure your students already know what that is because we talk to them. And I love how you said you talk to them. I totally believe in talking to the children like adults, even though it's hard for them to follow us, and repetition obviously is so correct, but it's so powerful because they now have real life learning moments, and that doesn't damage a relationship because either logical or natural consequence is something they learn that happens because of whatever they've done, right? So you're not the bad guy, it's just a situation that teaches you a lesson. And that's such a powerful shift for children, and I hope for parents as well, right? So I get this question from a lot of parents. How can I set firm boundaries without yelling or threatening? And that's very hard to overcome because, as parents say, but they're testing my boundaries. So what do you think?
There's a few examples I can use when it comes to setting.
Sure.
First thing is having eye level with the child. If you're at the same,
Love this.
then the child will understand exactly what's happening. But if you're talking from the top, the child will be like, oh, So what? You know, like I don't have to listen. Or from the bottom. It has to be exact same eye contact and level when you discuss about any topics. Let's say if the child did something wrong, you have to explain why it was wrong because kids don't understand the difference between right and wrong. How would they know if they didn't grow up with it or if they weren't really, let's say, not disciplined, but just used to it a certain way. So by getting at their eye level, that's one. Second is to have your eyes open without saying anything. By yelling, they automatically know, oh, I got her attention. I can do it again. I'm gonna keep doing it again. And so what? You can punish me. I like this attention, you know? And after that, of course, when you look the kid in the eye, which is first. Second, you don't say anything. Don't respond. You just look at the kid for like a minute and the child will be confused. Like, what's going on? I don't understand. Why is mommy or daddy looking at me like that? You know? Uh, Now, the third one is a very hard one. You have to count at least 10 seconds before you say anything. Because, yes,
React.
sometimes it happens where the parents react and they're like, oh my God, why would you do that? And the child is like, wow. The child just starts screaming and crying and like reacting in such a way that you can't even control it. And he could even
Yeah.
storm out of the room and go somewhere and throw toys all over the place. Who knows? But in my opinion, in my professional opinion, always make sure eye level, you do these things. Eye level, don't talk first, just look. Third is talk firmly. Wait 10 seconds and talk firmly. Say, today you did something wrong and I don't think it was right. I think you could do better. And I've seen you behaving much, much better. If you keep up this behavior, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. Let's say we're not going to go to the ice cream store today. And the child starts to remember that over time. And again, repetition is perfect for these kids.
I absolutely love this. And being a parent for over 20 years already, I think none of us actually know what's coming next. And there's not enough experience of being a parent to know what the right step is. My son is almost 21, my little one is 7, and it's still as if I'm learning every time what the right boundaries are. So, what I've learned throughout my years of parenting is that when you set clear but very constant expectations ahead of time, right? Then the children know what to expect. You use very calm but very firm, as you said, language. You follow through. If you said you're going to punish for whatever reason that is, and it's not about the punishment, it's about being respectful and confident. But if you said that there's a consequence, you follow through with that consequence because children respond so much better when there's consistency rather than chaos. And I always say strong boundaries, soft tone, because kids feel safer when the adult leads them with both firmness and warmth. And just recently, I know my daughter is here, she's going to kill me for telling it, just had a conflict between my middle child and my little child. And he said, but I don't want to hurt her because my little one was hitting her. So I said, just sit down to her eye level. Sit down literally to her eye level, hold her hands and say, this is not okay. So her answer was, but that's weird. That is weird. But when we do that, like you said, the eye level, it's when the children now understand that's not the big person yelling at me. It's now someone who levels up with me and I feel safe. So that's so incredible how the things you're using in your profession is definitely things that parenting is requiring to have that skill. And that's just great. Based on your experience, what type of rewards actually build internal motivation instead of dependency?
Internal. So this one is a very good question. Why I'll say. There are times and challenges I had with kids where I was trying to find what works besides the reward system. So as a therapist, I always get in contact with the parents to find out what the child loves to do. Let's say the child likes to play soccer or basketball or some other sport. I always incorporate it into my session. Let's say they need to work on their writing skills. we'll talk about Messi or some other soccer player. And we'll write it out why he likes Messi or what's so important about Messi, you know. And that motivates him internally already to write about something that he's interested in versus writing about the weather, writing about something that he's not really into. And of course, over time, I incorporate writing about other topics, not just Messi or the soccer players.
Yeah, this is great. And again, through parenting, so lucky to have so much experience as a parent. I think recognition and responsibility is something that worked for me, right? Some children just love being responsible for something. So when you let them be responsible or create those meaningful connections, for example, let your child take a new responsibility as a reward because you know that this is something that very motivating them, or anything that actually drives them towards doing this, or spend special time with parents, or have like a handwritten note that show them that you thought of them. These are little things, but I love that. And time over toys is always better as parenting. Children crave for time, and that would be their best reward over anything. What made you proud of yourself today to build that inner compass?
With the kids or in
Kids.
general.
The kids.
I work with a few populations, so I had to,
Yeah.
yeah, specify. Um, well, I just love what I do. That's first. Second, how did I get to where I am today? Is it's quite a loaded question, but I can answer it. So let's go with this. I really grew up being the oldest sibling, and I felt like a second mother. And I loved working with kids, always. Whether it be my cousins, whether it be my siblings, whether it be my friends' siblings, I just loved it. And being that I was the oldest, I, did trial and error with them, and I saw what worked and what didn't. I would do that with my sisters and my brother, the same thing. I would say, if you do so and so, you'll get this at the end of the week. So I feel like because I loved what I did with them and other kids, it just grew in me where I want to work with kids. And I never thought I would because I was working with the elderly population and teenagers, which is two different things. And kids at, 5 years old, totally different. And I'm very happy that I went into this field. I have to say, it's very fun for me at least. I don't feel like I work. I go to work. I'll call it like fun for me, like again. Um, because I don't go in feeling like I'm stressed. I'm going in creating activities for them where they're feeling they're part of something big. So, like I said, if they don't like writing, which is what I work on a lot. Earlier, I mentioned that. Um, I give them, let's say, to make bracelets, some kind of creative activity where they feel like they're very involved and they're doing something purposeful versus, oh, OT, ugh, I don't want to do it today. Why should I? Like, this is boring. They push things away. I don't want to do it. Okay, fine. Let's do something that you like. What do you like? I want to play soccer. Let's do X, Y, and Z first, then we'll do soccer, you know? And I like to make my sessions fun. Like, I'll get cones and I'll get a jump rope. I'll do all these fun things for them. But going back, like I said, I love my profession and I wouldn't trade it for any other profession. If I have to do it over and over, I would do it again. It involves exercise also. It involves the whole person in one. So it's a holistic approach, what I do. And I love it.
Well, that you're saying that, because I always say if you love what you do, you don't have to work a single day in your life. And that's exactly how I wake up every single morning. This passion of doing what you love. And that's so great to hear. But you just mentioned that you love kids, and I love to hear that because that's what you basically work with. But how do we connect that to teenagers? Because those kids eventually become teens. And we know there is a lot of shift in the approach that we do when we work with teenagers as opposed to kids. So, what changes in how we approach those consequences when we get from kids to teens?
Okay. Teenagers are very different. They're going through a hormonal time and they're kind of confused with certain stages in their life. So you have to sometimes really not only sit down, of course, they won't feel comfortable just telling you everything. Over time, give them, you know, moments to feel comfortable with you as a therapist or as a parent. You can't just expect them to answer all the questions. Give them time, let them write it out how they feel. If they're misbehaving, you just ask them, why did you do that? But with kids, see, kids are easier to work with. They're easier. You can basically have a reward system in place where it works. But with teenagers, some don't really care. They don't want to be part of that reward system. Like, oh, so what? I'll get candy today. Okay, big deal. Like, why should I come to the session? Why should I do this? I can go and play soccer outside with my other teacher. Like you have to somehow talk to them. Of course, like in the beginning, I mentioned earlier, it's not going to be easy. You have to sit with them in some sessions where they're just going to sit and like look at you or the wall, and you'll say, what do you like? You ask them questions, you show them that you're interested in learning about them. So what I do, I give them a whole questionnaire. Of course, it's not a lot of questions. They won't want to sit through that session. So I give them 10 questions, one being their name, age, and the hobbies they like to do, and write down who's their favorite player, whether it be soccer, basketball, uh, well, not ballet, but tennis. Who knows?
Too.
Could be.
The child is. My kids dance ballet.
They do. They
Yes.
have a favorite, like a dance or a specific ballerina they like.
Honestly, I've never asked them that. Thank you for the question. I have some homework to do.
It's good to read that.
That's a tradition. Yes.
Yeah, they want to feel needed. Kids want to feel needed, especially when they're teenagers. They're going through a whole confusions time. If you want me to continue with the examples, I can. Like, I have two types. I'm thinking which one to use. Okay. So there's a girl. She was around 12 years old, and she didn't talk to anyone, not at all. She would just walk in the hallways with her back slouched, head down. And of course, I got lucky to work with her because she changed a lot. She progressed. From the time I met her till the end of the school year, such a big change. All the teachers noticed. So I'll tell you what I did. She didn't want to talk to me in the beginning of the sessions. And I said, just write it out. If you don't want to talk to me, just write it out. Writing was part of her goal. So she would write it out, saying, for example, things like, I'm depressed, I had a very bad day, kids were not nice to me, they were bullying me, they did X, Y, and Z, like really bad things. And I said, oh my gosh, is this really what's happening? Like, of course, I didn't respond right away. I said, can I read the paper? And at first, she didn't want to share it with me. After, she was like, 15 minutes, she's like, you can look at it. Because I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. I did the eye contact, of course, like I did with the kids. And I guess she gave in and she said, here you go. And I looked at the paper and I'm like, wow, these are horrible things. I said, do you want me to tell the principal or teacher? And she's like, no, please don't. And I feel like she would lose that connection with me, the comfort and the
Right.
trust. So I thought to myself, okay, but I still have to take action without her knowing. Of course, bullying is not accepted in schools.
Right.
Of course, over time, like she trusted me enough to tell me what exactly was happening, but I found out it wasn't true. There was no bullying happening. There was no such thing. It's just how she felt internally, what was going on with her. So I had
Right.
to do more digging, meaning like the psychological aspect besides the, handwriting and everything else that's involved, like physical aspect or whatever it is, the exercises. And she became more open with me. She said, the reason why I'm depressed is because my grandma passed away. I'm like, oh. And some things like symbolize negativity to her. Like I had bananagrams on the table. She's like, I really don't want to look at that. And she started crying. I'm like, what happened? She's like, this reminds me of the time my grandma died. I'm like, okay. So I quickly shifted to making sure she would not feel depressed or sad in any way. I always made sure before any session, I would hide the bananagram. She wouldn't see it. So the point of the story is over time, she became happy coming to my sessions and she was herself because I treated her like a regular child, a regular teenager. I made her feel wanted and seen.
Right. And like you said, teenagers really are still developing, so their brain is still forming, but they want to be treated like adults. So structure without shame really works, which is what you did with that example. I feel like teenagers crave so much autonomy that punishment may become or feels like a power struggle. So instead, when you give like a choice with limits or rewards, but not candies, because that's not working anymore, right? Focus on some privileges, on some responsibilities, like earning something, some curfew or some trust that they're getting. That works a lot better with teenagers than it would work with the younger kids, right?
Correct.
So shifting to parents, what do you think a parent should do after a child made a bad choice according to the parent, right? What do you think when a child makes a mistake, maybe lies or hits their sibling, what is the most effective way to handle it?
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of parents have that question for me as
Yeah,
a therapist.
yeah.
My recommendation is if the child lies, you would have to first see if she's really lying, right? Can't believe the other siblings or the other kids. Let me reword that. If all the kids are saying she's lying about something, it must be they're gaining up against the child or she really is lying. So you can't automatically assume the child is doing something wrong. What you could do is talk to each child separately, not have them all in the same room because if they're all in the same room, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be fights, and it's just not going to end well with the kids. So I'm not a parent, I'm just a therapist. I'm saying from the professional side of,
And I love that professional experience, absolutely.
I think that it's best to take a child to the side or to her room and speak to her privately and see if all the stories match up. If all the stories match up and the child did lie, then that child needs to get some kind of consequence for whatever action it was. But if
Yeah.
it's consistently happening where they're saying this child did, I don't know, like let's say took a cookie from another sibling, I would say that you would have to, in a way, sit with that child and always punish them in a nice way. When I say nice way, don't put them in their room. Make them do a purposeful punishment where there is a purpose and there is a punishment, meaning they don't want to do it. Like cleaning the dishes, going outside and mowing the lawn, depending on the mowing the lawn, sorry, depends on the age, of course. Um, It could be also reading a book to another sibling. If the child is like, let's say, 17 years old and you have a 5-year old, you could just say, hey, you know what you did last time? And we had this discussion. So today you're going to have the child read a book before your 5-year old goes to sleep.
This is really good. I think so. I want to pause and go back first because when you said ask questions, I love this because as a mom myself, I always say get curious, not furious. If you ask questions like what happened and what do you think could have been done differently next time, it's so important to actually get to the bottom, especially between conflicts of siblings and different settings, but then guide them through that repair. I always make sure my kids are always okay together at the end of the day because things happen between siblings, but like writing an apology or really apologizing or helping clean up, like you said, or do certain things that just diffuses the situation, but by the end of the day my kids know they gotta talk to each other, like it's fine, it happened, You had a conflict. By the end of the day, before you go to sleep, everything is patched up because I believe in connection before correction. They have to connect. And when we connect first of all, kids feel safe enough to reflect and grow, but they also learn the correct way to diffuse the situation. Conflict happens at any age, and you know that. We're adults and we still do those confrontations from time to time. But if you learn that from early on, it really basically shifts back to your later life. And being honest, as a parent, parenting is very emotional. So how can a parent stay calm when they feel that they're being triggered?
There's a few ways to take this. So I'll say the most simplest way is yes, it happens where the parent can yell. Like I think I mentioned it earlier, where you have to count till 10 before you
Yeah,
say anything. So if you're really, let's say, as a parent, really, really mad and feeling emotional, I would say close your eyes, think of something nice. Think of like the beach or the ocean and say, okay, I have to count to 10. I have to be good at this right now. This is my kids. They are going to react to my response. So if I say something that will get them really mad, they'll remember this. So let me count till 10. And after you count till 10 and close your eyes, of course, at the same time, you say, honey, what you did was wrong. You could have done it in a better way. You know that. You're very smart. Use positive words, of course, with the kids, you know? And when you say things in a positive or a good way, the child starts thinking, oh, okay, I see why my mom was saying this because I am smart, I am good, I am this. But if a parent responds, you did what? Like starts yelling, and the child gets really scared and traumatized. Like, oh my God, how do I respond? Like, what do I say now? What if my mom is gonna start yelling all day and now I can't do anything? I can't focus on in school or my friendships or socializing because I'm just thinking about what happened. So the way you respond as a parent is very important for a child's development, for a child, not just development, but everything, the way they react with others, they learn from parents.
for sure. And I love that you said just to take a breath, really take a breath. And I tell all the parents, step away if you need to. If you feel that you're too emotional and you may trigger certain reactions, stay away. Just leave, calm down, and come back to this. Because remember, your calm is so much more powerful than any punishment. And when you know how to regulate yourself, you model exactly what you want your child to learn. You're not just managing their behavior, you are modeling emotional intelligence, which I've talked a lot about in my lives. Self regulation is co regulation. When you know how to do that, children learn for sure and they will follow this. So, last one, Sofiya. What is one reward or consequence that really shifted your experience work with children?
Hmm. Reward, consequence. So I'm,
Mentioned it already, but let's see if you can say something else.
I'm just thinking about these two twins I work with. They're
Go ahead.
very, uh, I guess I'll give another story or example based on my experience. So that changed the child. So okay, there's two twins that I worked with who are 5 years old, and they both have the same behaviors. One is a little more calmer than the other. In the beginning of the sessions, this child would come into the room jumping on the table, jumping on a chair, and like I didn't react. I was about to, but I didn't. And I literally just looked at the child and I said, well, of course I stared and before I said anything, and I said, after staring, is that something we do? You're a very smart boy. You do not jump on a table. That's not appropriate. Is this what you do at home? He just stopped. and stared at me and didn't know how to respond. And I told him, can you please get down from the table and sit like a proper boy on the chair? He got off the table, sat down. He had his hands on the table because he's been to my sessions before. And he was ready to listen. Of course, I had my timer on. And he's like, oh no, Miss Sofiya, I don't want that timer. I don't like it. I'm like, well, I didn't say anything about you jumping on the table. I wasn't happy about that too. And it wasn't appropriate. And I had to wait a few seconds for it to get off. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like he starts apologizing. I already taught him how to apologize, of course, after like 6 sessions. And he became much better. Now, the other twin, it took a while. He would not stop jumping on the table. And I didn't use the reward system at first with him, but over time, the reward system really helped. He started sitting more faster than his other brother who didn't have the reward system. So it was such a difference. And like over time, they both started progressing the same way because I was using the same activities, the same things because they had the same goals. They were both 5 years old. And they had really good consequences. Why I call it good consequences is because I didn't say anything at first. I was quiet. I stared at the child, and then I said something in a very calm and firm way. And of course, I've used positive wording with the child. They both became really, really good. The mother called me up one day and she said, I don't know what you did, but the kids are very calm at home. They stopped throwing toys around the table and around the floor. They sit now when it comes to eating. It's because when I take them out, I make sure they sit also during lunchtime properly and eat with a spoon, not with their hands. OT is all about teaching also proper skills, the proper skill set, you know. Um, so over time, rewards did help, and the consequences really helped change the way the child developed over the year.
Yeah, this is great. And I think using positive attention as rewards when they get attention only for good things they've done, but like you did with the jumping, you didn't give a negative attention to it. You didn't force him to come out. You waited. And that is so, so important because that changes everything. Kids thrive when they feel seen, not just scolded, right? And that's a great reminder for all of us as parents or therapists or anyone that works with educators, that works with kids. We don't need fancy reward charts. We just need to be present. We need to be consistent and we need to have empathy. This is such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Sofiya, for your wisdom, for your experience, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I really enjoyed having this discussion, and you're full of wisdom as well. And you have wonderful podcasts. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the parents that are watching. You are your child's most important teacher, whether through rewards, consequences, every moment is a chance to guide, not just to react. Keep showing up with love with your kids, and your kids will grow in a way that you can't even imagine. Stay tuned to our next Limitless Live. And remember, parenting isn't about perfection, it's about connection. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you soon in my next podcast. Have a great week, guys.